Sonic Tag Team Heroes is a fan-made tabletop role-playing game that puts you in control of a character in the Sonic the Hedgehog universe. As a player, you will need multiple 6-sided and 10-sided dice, as well as a character sheet that records your character's statistics for quick reference. In this tutorial, you will learn the fundamentals of combining these materials to perform actions within the Sonic TTH game. To begin with, we will overview how character abilities are represented with core attribute ratings and talent ranks. Character abilities are represented in Sonic Tag Team Heroes with 5 attributes. Each of these attributes is an indispensable asset to your team. Speed determines how quick and maneuverable your character is, power, how strong and resilient, dexterity, how nimble and steady-handed, intellect, how perceptive and knowledgeable, and charisma, how persuasive and strong-willed. The 5 attributes each have 3 skills associated with them. These are effectively the buttons on the controller that your GM will ask you to press when your character performs an action. Your character can improve their performance in these skill checks by ranking up their skills, which scale from 0 to 4. While attribute ratings represent a character's innate ability and talent, ranks represent a character's training and finesse. The 15 skills cover a wide variety of scenarios, such as attacking, traversing zones, understanding the world around you, and influencing thoughts and feelings. Pause the video here or consult the rulebook directly for full details. Skill check difficulty is measured in a number of ways, but for the purposes of this tutorial, we will be mainly concerned with difficulties that scale from 1 to 4. 1 difficulty checks represent tasks that have meaningful consequences when succeeded or failed, but are otherwise fairly simple. 4 difficulty checks represent absurdly difficult tasks that are all but guaranteed to go completely wrong, or at the very least have major complications. 2 and 3 difficulty checks reside between these two extremes. Once again, consult the rulebook for full details. With that context established, we'll now go over how to interpret your skills to build a dice pool and determine the results of the roll. When performing an action with dramatic consequence, your Game Master will ask you to roll 1 or more dice to see how many hits you rolled. This is determined by counting how many dice rolled a 5 or higher. The GM will require a certain number of hits to be generated depending on the difficulty of the check, and reaching this target number will determine if the skill that was checked succeeded or failed. In Sonic Tag Team Heroes, there are 2 types of dice to roll. The basic dice that most roles will use are the 6-sided hit dice. With skill ranks, a character is able to upgrade their hit dice and switch them out for 10-sided trick dice. The ratio of hit dice and trick dice is determined by comparing the number in the skill's base attribute with the number of ranks in the specified skill. The player then takes a number of hit dice equal to the larger number and swaps them with the number of trick dice equal to the smaller number. This is also known as upgrading them. In most cases, this will mean your attribute rating becomes how many dice you roll, and your skill ranks determine how many dice are going to be spiced up with the trick dice. For example, let's say your character wanted to hop across a series of platforms to reach the other side of a pit. The GM informs you that a standard challenge like this will require a 1 difficulty acrobat skill check. This means you will need to roll at least 1 die with a 5 result or higher. You consult your character sheet and note that the acrobat skill is listed under your speed attribute. You have a speed rating of 3 and 1 rank in acrobat. You take the highest number and grab that many hit dice. You then take the lower number and replace your dice pool with that many trick dice. In this case, you now have 1 trick die and 2 hit dice to roll with. You roll your dice pool and roll 3, 1, 6. This means you generated 1 hit, a success. Your character gets to the other side without any trouble. However, let's say that the GM had decided that the platforms are constantly changing positions. Some are spinning, some are lowering up and down, the pressure is on. The GM reasons that this extra complication makes the check too difficulty. In this case, your check did not succeed, because you needed 2 hits and only generated 1. Unfortunately, your character lost their nerve and did not make it to the other side. At least it didn't get any worse, right? Right? A unique feature of the blur dice system is multi-axis resolution. Rather than simply deciding success or failure, A skill check in Sonic Tag Team Heroes generates a number of different outcomes to propel the story in unexpected directions. This means you can fail a check but still accomplish something positive, or succeed a check but introduce a new complication. These come in 4 varieties. Tricks introduce extra pizzazz to a skill roll. For example, your character finds an additional item or makes a task easier for others. Slips are a minor fumble. For example, you lose your footing and make it easier for an enemy to hit you, or make it harder for you to hit them on your next turn. These 2 results are triggered by rolling doubles of certain numbers, or by rolling certain results on a trick die. For tricks, this could mean rolling 2 5s, 2 6s, a 7, or an 8. For slips, this could mean rolling 2 1s, 2 2s, or a 0. Beyond tricks and slips are the possibility of even more drastic surprises: critical trick and critical slip. These generally achieve the same results as normal tricks and slips, but with more potency. They may also allow a character to deal or receive critical damage, which typically happens during combat. This tutorial won't dive too deep into critical damage, but just know it can be a major turning point in any situation. A critical trick is generated by rolling 3 5s, 3 6s, 2 7s, 2 8s, or a single 9. Meanwhile, a critical slip is generated by rolling 3 1s, 3 2s, or 2 0s. For the purpose of counting hits, critical tricks rolled on a 9 add an extra hit along with the benefit they give, but critical slips simply count as a standard failure result with an unfortunate side effect. To illustrate just how many exciting possibilities are interpreted by these results, let's go back to our earlier example with the platforms. Let's say your stats are adjusted in this scenario, and you have a character with a speed of 4 and 2 ranks in Acrobat. You're ready to take on the spinning platforms with gusto. 7, 0, 5, 3. Here we have 2 hits, since we have 2 results of 5 or higher. The check succeeds no matter what. This means that the character gets the other side as intended. That question was answered when they generated the 2 required hits the check called for. With a 7, a trick is generated, and with a 0, a slip. These results are tracked independently of each other and the total hits that were generated. They do not cancel each other out in any way. The resolution for a trick is determined by the player controlling the character, in this case, you. You consult your handy cheat sheet, available in the Player Resources section under the Download section on the Sonic Tag Team Heroes website. You decide you would like your character to uncover a hidden item. In this case, you elect to find 5 rings, and add them to your character sheet in the appropriate section. This benefit is now locked in and can't be undermined by the slip. The slip is determined by the player on the opposing side, in this case, the GM. The GM decides to add a +1 disadvantage penalty to the next player attempting the same jump and narrate it as one of the platforms crumbling away behind you. All the results are now accounted for and play moves on. Let's rewind and say you rolled a different result. 9, 1, 1, 1. This is quite a spectacular roll. 1 9 creates a critical trick, and 3 1s create a critical slip. Since a critical trick was rolled, the 9 counts as 1 success on its own and adds another success on top, still fulfilling the 2-hit requirement. The check succeeds as before, the ultimate success of the task is locked in, but what about it went spectacularly wrong and right along the way? You consult the cheat sheet as before and decide this time to benefit your fellow teammates rather than yourself, passing a dice upgrade to the next player. This means that the player will swap out an extra hit die with a trick die. Narrate this as showing the other players the way as you jump across. The GM spends the critical slip with an ironic twist. They inflict critical damage on you and narrate it as the ground beneath you collapsing onto a spike trap, causing you to lose your rings and only allowing you to recover a fraction of them before regaining your footing on the other side. You certainly showed your team how not to cross to the other side. For the sake of being thorough, let's make one more imaginary roll. 5, 2, 2, 4. 1 hit and a slip. This means that you failed the check because only one of the 2 needed hits were rolled. With the slip, this accentuates the failure. Not only did you not cross to the other side, you slipped and are dangling off the edge. To recover, you'll need to roll an additional check or have someone assist. Oop. 5222. Oh, would you look at that? I misread the numbers. It was actually 3 2s all along. A critical slip. Your character actually plummets off into the pit. Who knows where that will lead? Hope your GM prepared for that. Sometimes a situation changes in a way that makes a check easier or harder due to situational modifiers. This actually came up earlier in the example with the check to hop across the pit. In one instance, the GM elected to spend a slip to make the skill check harder for the next player by having one of the platforms crumble. The way that advantage and disadvantage work in the simplest terms is by reducing and increasing the difficulty of a skill check respectively. A 2 difficulty check being attempted with a +1 advantage modifier becomes a 1 difficulty check. A 1 difficulty check being attempted with a +2 disadvantage modifier results in a 3 difficulty check. The difficulty can only be modified on a scale from 1 to 4, and if a character attempts a 1 difficulty check with remaining advantage, they instead upgrade a number of dice in their dice pool equal to the remaining advantage, with the inverse process being used for remaining disadvantage. These modifiers cancel each other out, so a +1 disadvantage modifier is cancelled out by a +1 advantage modifier, resulting in a net 0 difficulty increase. The other primary types of skill checks that we haven't covered are opposed skill checks and no difficulty skill checks. Opposed skill checks are done with 2 acting characters who are simultaneously acting against each other. In this case, 2 characters will roll a check at the same time, and hits rolled on each side cancel each other out. The character that ultimately rolled the most hits succeeds. Tricks, slips, and crits are resolved individually for each character using the same guidelines as before. A character sneaking past a guard, for example, will typically roll a sneak check, while the guard rolls a perceive check. If the sneaky character rolled 2 hits and the guard rolled 1, the sneaky character passes through with 1 hit. If the guard rolled 2 hits or more, the sneaker is discovered. Since opposed checks don't have a flat difficulty, applying advantage and disadvantage is anchored around the acting character modifying the reacting character's dice pool. The reacting character removes hit dice and then trick dice from the roll equal to the acting character's advantage. Dice may be removed with advantage until a reacting character has none left. If there is yet more advantage left over, the acting character upgrades their dice by 1 for each remaining advantage. Conversely, disadvantage adds hit dice to their check equal to the acting character's total disadvantage. In the last example, the sneaky character is acting while the guard is reacting. Let's say another character created a distraction and gave advantage to their ally. The guard would roll 1 less hit die on their check, giving the sneaker a real edge. However, let's say that the character attempted the same check without assistance and attempts to sneak past the guard in an open clearing in bright afternoon daylight. The GM might rule that this results in a net +2 disadvantage, adding 2 hit dice to the guard's perceived check. Tables have turned. The final difficulty type is no difficulty. At times, a task may be so trivial that even a 1 difficulty check would be redundant. The GM may simply tell you that you are able to perform the task without any effort. On occasion, a task may be guaranteed to succeed, but the results that you roll will tell a worthwhile story of how well you succeed. This is most commonly seen in zone challenges, where your character rolls to see how many rings they manage to grab on their way to the end of the zone. Getting from point A to point B is guaranteed. Bragging rights are a roll of the dice. The process that this video has covered applies when one of the 15 skills are specifically checked. But on certain occasions, the GM may call for a check based solely on a base attribute, rather than a certain skill, in which case you will simply roll a number of hit dice equal to that attribute rating without upgrading any dice, unless the GM says otherwise. This is typically done for saving throws, which are incidental checks a character makes when reacting to something, such as holding their breath underwater and escaping from restraints. There are a number of rolls your character will make which pertain to combat, such as rolling a defensive dodge or a preemptive initiative, which have their own rules. Combat is outside the scope of this tutorial, but stay tuned. there might just be a video for combat on the way. In the meantime, consult the rulebook for full details. That concludes this tutorial on how to roll and interpret skill checks. Now that you know the fundamentals of how to be a tag team hero, keep on rolling.